Her blood sister threw her into a well because of jealousy. Now the same sister is walking into her salon to ask for a favour. This is the final chapter of Adanna's story. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 5, pause this video and check my channel pages for them. You need to see how far she climbed to understand what happens next. The salon was alive. Hairdryers hummed. Customers laughed. Apprentices hurried from one station to another carrying combs, attachments and hair products. The television mounted on the wall played softly in the background while women discussed marriages, school, fees and market prices. Adanna stood near the centre of it all. Her fingers moved through a customer's hair with practised confidence. Years ago she had gone from house to house begging for customers. Now people booked appointments weeks in advance. It had taken years of rejection, years of hunger, years of work. But she had built something real. And for the first time in a long time, life felt stable. Then Mrs. Ease walked in. At first Adanna didn't think much of it. Mrs. Ease was one of her regular customers. She came often, brought friends, recommended the salon to colleagues. But something was wrong. Mrs. Ease wasn't smiling. She wasn't greeting anyone. She wasn't chatting. She looked uncomfortable, almost nervous. Adanna noticed immediately. Years of studying people's faces had taught her how to read what they were trying to hide. She finished the braid she was working on, then quietly wiped her hands. "Mrs. Ease." The older woman looked up. "Can we talk?" Adanna nodded. Back room. The small office at the rear of the salon was quiet compared to the chaos outside. Mrs. Ease sat down. Adanna remained standing. "What happened?" Mrs. Ease hesitated, then sighed. "Someone has been looking for you." Adanna frowned. "Who?" Mrs. Ease looked directly at her. "A woman." The room suddenly felt smaller. "She has been asking questions." Adanna's expression didn't change, but something tightened inside her chest. "What kind of questions?" "Where you live? Where you work? How long you've been here?" The tightness grew. Mrs. Ease swallowed. "She came to my office 2 days ago." Adanna's voice became very quiet. "What is her name?" Mrs. Ease took a breath. "Chioma." Everything stopped. The sounds from the salon seemed to disappear. For a moment Adanna heard nothing. Not the dryers, not the customers, not even her own breathing. Just one name. Chioma. The name she had spent years burying. The name that lived at the bottom of a well. That night the salon closed early. Helen noticed immediately. "You're sure you're okay?" "I'm fine." Helen studied her, clearly not believing her. But she didn't push. She simply nodded. "See you tomorrow." Soon everyone left. The salon became silent, dark, empty. Adanna remained sitting near the window. Alone, she stared at nothing and remembered everything, the hug, the apology, the arms around her, the brief moment she had believed her sister finally loved her, then the fall, the darkness, the cold water, the broken leg, the realization that nobody was coming. Her throat tightened. Years had passed, but some memories never aged. Slowly she picked up her phone, scrolled, found a number, called. It rang twice, then Adanna. Emeka's voice, warm, familiar, steady. She closed her eyes. For a moment neither spoke. Then he said softly, "What's wrong?" Adanna laughed quietly, not because anything was funny, because he always knew. "Nothing." "You're lying." A pause, then another. Neither rushed to fill the silence. Eventually she said, "Thank you." Emeka frowned. "For what?" She stared into the darkness. "I don't know." Another silence. Comfortable, familiar, safe. Then she ended the call and sat alone with her thoughts. 3 days later, Chioma arrived. The salon was packed, every chair occupied, customers talking, apprentices working, money changing hands, life moving forward. Then the door opened, and everything slowed. Helen stopped mid-sentence. A customer turned, another followed. Soon the entire room was looking. Chioma stood in the doorway. Older, thinner, less polished than before. The expensive confidence she once wore like perfume had faded, but traces remained. She still held her chin high, still carried herself like Chioma. For a long moment neither sister moved, neither smiled, neither spoke. Then Chioma stepped forward. "Hello, Adanna." Adanna looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman who stole her savings. The woman who pushed her into a well. The woman who stood beside their mother while they spent money bought with her suffering. And yet she felt no urge to scream, no urge to attack, no urge to cry. Just tiredness, a deep tiredness. "Say what you came to say." The salon became completely silent. Chioma swallowed. "Mummy is sick." No reaction. "Her condition has been getting worse with each passing day." She continued. Still nothing. "She wants to see you." Adanna continued arranging the customer's hair. Her voice remained calm. "Anything else?" Chioma blinked. Clearly she had expected something, anger, shock, emotion. Instead she found indifference. Then her eyes began moving around the salon, slowly, carefully. She noticed things she hadn't seen before. The modern styling chairs, the reception desk, the television, the shelves lined with products, the framed certificates on the wall, the customers, the apprentices, the respect, most of all, the respect. People listened when Adanna spoke. People waited for her decisions. People called her name constantly. "Auntie Adanna. Auntie Adanna. Auntie Adanna." The words seemed to come from everywhere. Chioma stared. For years she had imagined Adanna exactly where she left her, small, broken, waiting to be loved. Instead, here stood a woman surrounded by people who already loved her, a woman who no longer needed permission to exist. Finally she asked, "You built all this?" Adanna looked at her. "Yes." Nothing else, just one word, but it landed like a hammer. Then Chioma noticed the customers staring, the apprentices staring, Helen staring. For the first time in years she feels judged instead of being the one doing the judging. That discomfort grows. Then one customer whispers, "Is this the sister?" Another, "The one that pushed her into the well?" The silence in the salon began to change. It was no longer the silence of curiosity. It was the silence of judgment. Chioma felt dozens of eyes on her, watching, measuring, deciding. A customer whispered something. Another customer shook her head. Chioma's stomach tightened. For years she had been the one looking down on Adanna. Now strangers were looking down on her. She hated it. "This is family business," she said sharply. "Everybody should stay clear and mind their own business." Chioma's voice carried a familiar edge, the old attempt to regain control. Before Adanna could respond, "Family business," one woman repeated. "Did she just say family business?" Another customer stood up. "Is this not the same family that threw her into a well? Because if it is, then we have business too." Murmurs spread through the salon. "After everything this woman has suffered, now you're here. Where were you when she was struggling? Where were you when she was begging for customers? Where were you when she rebuilt this place?" Then Adanna calms them. "Enough." Her voice wasn't loud, but everyone stopped. Adanna looked around the room. "Thank you." Then she smiled faintly. "But I've got this," she said calmly. Before she could say anything else, Mrs. Ease stood up and spoke. "I've been coming here for years." Every head turned. Mrs. Ease folded her arms. "And Adanna has never said one good thing about you." "I've heard her say many things about Emeka, Helen, Mama Bola and others. I've seen them coke through for her in difficult times. But only when things started getting better did family come back. "What a joke!" she concluded as she returned to her seat. Silence filled the shop. Then Helen spoke without even looking up from the braid she was working on. "Do you want water?" Chioma stared. "No." Chioma replied Helen in confusion. "Then step aside." Helen pointed toward the fan. "You're blocking it." A few customers laughed softly, not mockingly, naturally, the way people laugh when someone states an obvious fact. For the first time, Chioma looked uncomfortable, because she realized something. Nobody here feared her. Nobody respected her. Nobody cared who she was. She was just a stranger standing in Adanna's salon. Chioma looked around the room, the customers defending Adanna, Helen standing beside her, Mrs. Ease folding her arms protectively. Even the apprentices looked ready to fight for her. Something ugly twisted inside Chioma's chest. Envy, not of the salon, of the people, of the loyalty, of the love. Then she laughed, a bitter laugh. "You got what you wanted," her voice cracked. "People look at you now." "You got what you wanted." Chioma's voice cracked slightly. She looked around. At the customers, the apprentices, the business, the life. "People look at you now. You're now the centre of attention, as you always wanted." Adanna was quiet for a moment. Then she replied, "I never wanted people to look at me. I just wanted to stop being afraid of them looking." The words hung in the air, heavy, final. Chioma had no answer, because she still didn't understand. She had spent her entire life chasing attention. She couldn't comprehend someone chasing peace instead. Her jaw tightened. Something flickered across her face. Shame, regret, anger. Maybe all three. She stared at Adanna, waiting, expecting something more, a speech, an accusation, anything. But Adanna simply returned her attention to the braid, as if the conversation was over, as if Chioma no longer mattered, and somehow that hurt more than the anger. Chioma felt her throat tighten. For years she had imagined this meeting. She thought Adanna would need something from her. Closure, justice, answers. Instead, Adanna needed nothing. Then she grabbed her bag and left. No apology, no redemption, no closure, just escape. She turned, walked toward the door, then paused, looked back once, at the salon, at the customers, at Adanna, trying to understand. How did the ugly girl at the bottom of a well become this woman? She couldn't figure it out. Then she left. The door closed behind her, and she was gone. Nobody spoke. Everyone looked at Adanna, expecting her to get angry or vent or do something. The silence lasted 5 seconds, maybe 6. Then one customer cleared her throat. "So," instead of replying, Adanna picked up her comb, looked at her customer and said, "Turn your head small." The customer blinked, then obeyed. The braid continued as if nothing happened. A few seconds later, a woman made a funny sound, causing everybody to laugh. Then conversation slowly returned. Life moved on. Chioma had interrupted it, but she could no longer stop it, and that was the difference. 2 weeks later, Adanna visited home. The house looked smaller than she remembered, and older. Just like the woman lying on the bed, Unoma, her mother. The woman who had once called her a disgrace. The woman who said they were better off without her. Now she looked fragile, weak, very weak. For a long time neither spoke. Then Unoma finally did. "I'm really sorry for everything I've done to you all those years. I did that because I was ashamed." "People talked." Adanna said nothing. "They laughed at me." Silence. "They looked at your face strangely." Her voice cracked. "And I didn't know how to handle it." Adanna continued looking at her in silence. "Chioma, on the other hand, was beautiful. Unlike you, she was normal. That was the only reason why I treated her better, because I always heard good things about her from outsiders. But for you, whenever I go outside with you, I almost always want to throw you away whenever I see the reactions of people to your face. Please, forgive me." Adanna stared at her mother as she listened. For years she had wanted answers. She had spent years wondering why, imagining some deep reason, some tragedy or secret, something big enough to explain the destruction of a childhood. Instead, this was it. Embarrassment, people's opinions, petty gossips. Her entire childhood had been sacrificed for something this small. Eventually she stood, picked up her bag, and looked at her mother. "I used to think you were cruel." Unoma stared up at her. "Now, I think you were just pathetic," Adanna continued. Then she left without looking back. That evening she returned to Lagos, returned to her salon, returned to her life. The salon was empty when she arrived. The trip left her exhausted. She felt hollow, like someone had finally answered a question she'd carried for years, and the answer wasn't worth hearing. That was the feeling she carried into the salon that evening. Everyone had gone home. She moved quietly through the room, tidying things, straightening chairs. Then she opened her workstation drawer. Inside sat a notebook. At first she assumed one of the apprentices forgot it. Then she opened it and froze. The first page read, "Auntie Adanna taught me this style." Second page, "Auntie Adanna stayed late to help me." Third page, "Auntie Adanna said mistakes are part of learning." Fourth page, "Auntie Adanna fixed my braid." Page after page, over and over. For years she had wanted to become beautiful, wanted to become normal, wanted to become acceptable. Instead, she became Auntie Adanna, someone people respected, someone trusted, someone loved. She stared at the notebook for a long time, then quietly closed it, and placed it back inside the drawer. A knock sounded behind her. She turned. Emeka stood at the doorway. She smiled. He smiled back and looked around the salon, taking everything in, then looked at her. "You built all this?" Adanna laughed softly. "Yes." For the second time that month, the answer felt very different. Emeka nodded. "I knew you'd make it," he said, pride filling his eyes, and for some reason she felt more proud of herself. Then Adanna laughed as she suddenly remembered a different version of herself, that one that was broken, dirty, helpless, pulled from a well by a stranger, sitting in a hospital bed with nowhere to go. And the man standing in front of her now had been there at the beginning of all of it, and for that he has her eternal gratitude. Later that night, after everyone left, Adanna stood before the salon mirror. The birthmark was still there, exactly where it had always been, the same mark that had made strangers stare, the same mark that had cost her a family, the same mark that had sent her to the bottom of a well. She studied it, but unlike before, she felt nothing. Not hatred, not shame, not pride, not acceptance, just nothing. The mark no longer mattered enough to create emotion. It was simply part of her face, nothing more, nothing less. She reached up and touched it briefly, then turned off the light, locked the salon, and walked into the Lagos night. People looked. She kept walking. Lagos hummed around her, cars, hawkers, music, spilling from a bar. A woman glanced at her face, then looked away. Another didn't look at all. People looked. She kept walking, that was the difference. The girl who once flinched at every glance was gone. Not because the mark had disappeared, because she had stopped measuring herself by how others reacted to it. She thought of the notebook, Auntie Adanna, written over and over by a girl who saw a teacher, not a scar. She thought of Helen, who stayed when everyone left, Mrs. Ez, who defended her, Emeka, who believed in her before she believed in herself. Mama Bola, who gave her a chance. For years she had wanted to be beautiful. Instead, she became necessary. Adanna's story teaches us that the things we hate most about ourselves are often not the problem. The problem is believing we need to be different to be worthy. She spent years trying to remove a mark from her face, only to discover that the mark was never what made her unlovable. It was the people who couldn't see past it who were broken. Her scars did not define her. Her choices did. She chose to work when others gave up. She chose to build when others destroyed. She chose to become someone worthy of love, not by changing her face, but by becoming a person people could not forget. In the end, the mark remained. But it no longer had the final word, because Adanna learned the truth that changes everything. You are not what happened to you. You are what you chose to become after. If Adanna's story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories like this. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they are enough, just as they are. And tell us in the comments, what is one thing you've learned to stop apologizing for? We read every comment. Your story might inspire someone else. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. And remember, no matter what mark you carry, you are not defined by it. You are defined by what you build after. See you in the next story.